Welcome to Cracked Open, a podcast about life, love, loss, and the truths we discover along the way. Together, we'll explore the struggles that shape us, the lessons we carry, and the hope that keeps us moving forward. This is more than stories. It's honesty. It's healing. It's real. Let's get started. And now your host, Glen Nunes.
When was the last time you actually thought about you? Not what somebody else needs from you. Not who you need to help. Not what you need to fix. Not what somebody thinks of you. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. You. Because some of us spend our whole entire lives showing up for everybody else. And we never realize the one person that we stop showing up for is ourselves. We'll give people our time, our energy, our forgiveness, our patience, our second chances, give them resources. We'll lose sleep worrying about things that we can't control. We beat ourselves up over mistakes that we made years ago. We'll stay in situations that steal our peace. We'll put off things that might make us happy because we're too busy taking care of everything and everybody else. And somehow, we call that love. But here's the question I've been thinking about. What would your life look like if you finally learned to love yourself enough? Love yourself enough to establish a boundary. Love yourself enough to forgive yourself. Love yourself enough to ask for help. Love yourself to take care of your body. Love yourself enough to stop living in the past. Love yourself enough to say no sometimes. Love yourself enough to stop measuring your worth by someone else's opinion. Love yourself enough to get out of bed on days when getting out of bed feels like the hardest freaking thing in the world. And maybe even love yourself enough to accept that you can't control every outcome, every person, every chapter of your life. And that's what we're talking about today. Not selfishness, not ego, not giving up on people, not giving up on anybody. It's learning how to stop giving up on yourself. Have you ever looked at the balance sheet of your own life and realized that you're completely bankrupting yourself just to fund everyone else's comfort? We're taught from day one to fight for people. We're taught to be patient, extend endless grace, give other chances. We even try to sacrifice our own sanity to keep a broken relationship alive at times. And look, I believe in miracles, I believe in restoration. But today, we're going to expose the dark side of devotion that nobody wants to talk about in reality. There's a definitive clinical line where patience turns into self-abandonment. There's a line where repeatedly and simply because of fear. Fear of the quiet room, maybe fear of being alone. If an entire daily schedule has become a long, exhausting waiting room, constantly living around other people's welfare, and constantly shrinking your own worth to accommodate a circle of lies and bullshit, you are no longer building a legacy. You're actively participating in your own destruction. And this isn't a pity party, and this isn't an emergency room. This is a tactical courtroom. It's time to step out of the smoke, establish a set ground, and love yourself enough to let shit go. I had a recent conversation with a total stranger who called me. He said something so powerful that it hit me like a knockout punch. It was a few-minute conversation, but one sentence he said settled the score for me. And this person was just doing their job, but he really helped me move forward from a stuck place. So, let's get down to business with this. I'm Glen Nunes, and this is Cracked Open. This is Season 3, Episode 13, and we're calling this one Love Yourself Enough. There comes a point when everything you're carrying starts costing you something you were never supposed to lose. Yourself. And maybe no one ever taught us that. You can become disconnected from your own values, your own needs, and even your own identity. Because peace at the cost of self-abandonment isn't peace at all. It's self-abandonment. That's exactly what it is. And that's what this episode is about. Not revenge, not bitterness. and not some bullshit motivational speech where I tell you to wake up tomorrow and magically stop caring. This is about something much harder. Learning to love yourself enough to keep living, even when the part of your heart is still somewhere else. So welcome to Cracked Open. I am Glen Nunes, and today I'm talking about what it really means to love yourself enough. Okay, so if this is your first time here, welcome. And if you're a repeated listener, I appreciate you coming back every week. And this week, I ended up having a really good day, and I'm probably going to talk about it in my next episode. I really started to feel positive about something when I was doing my research that I found mistakenly. And I want to get back on this. So have you ever just sat at your own kitchen table, you looked around at a quiet room, and asked yourself the ultimate question? How did I get here? How? I recently watched an interview with a 103-year-old woman who had survived an entire century of human history, wars, heartbreaks, and loss. And when they asked her the secret to outlasting the storms of her life, her wisdom cut straight through the fog like a lightning bolt. She didn't talk about fighting harder. She didn't talk about negotiating or begging. She talked about the power of knowing your worth and having discipline to walk away from tables where respect is no longer being served. So again, I want to just welcome you back. And again, if it's your first time here, thank you for joining me. I have a lot of people who've been walking through this journey with me, and I want to welcome you back as well. This podcast has never been about pretending life is easy. Not from episode 1 of season 1. It's about opening the places that have been cracked open by pain, loss, disappointment, grief, heartbreak, but also hope and encouragement. And it's allowing God to bring healing through all those cracks. So that's why I wanted to call this episode Love Yourself Enough. So today I want to talk about that because, believe me, there comes a moment when loving yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. So let's begin and get into this. Because there's another part of loving yourself enough that I think we sometimes get completely wrong. And that's boundaries. Because for years, I think a lot of us were taught that if you really love somebody, you sacrifice, right? You give, you forgive, you show up, you make yourself available. And none of those things are bad. None of those are bad at all. That's what you're supposed to do if you love somebody, right? But somewhere along the way, sacrifice can turn into something else. You can stop believing that being a good partner, a good friend, a best friend, a good parent, or a good person means I'll always say yes, I'll always answer, I'll always be there, I'll take the hurt, I'll keep the peace, I'll understand, I'll do whatever it takes. And eventually, you can send a message without ever actually saying the words, my needs don't matter as much as keeping you in my life. We keep showing up. We keep trying to fix things. We keep saying it's okay, no problem, whatever you need. Even when inside it's not okay. Is it? Is this you? And eventually, you become exhausted and maybe even resentful at times. And yeah, it can hurt like hell. But somebody being upset about your boundary doesn't automatically mean the boundary was wrong. I'm a musician, for those of you who don't know, and I never say no. Somebody needs me, I'm the guy. But when I need something moved around or changed, or I never cancel. But if something comes up, it seems like I've had people not get attitudes, but I could tell that it bothered them and they would hold things against me. So I would always never say no. My pastor, actually, at church, I used to play in the worship team, and I never said no. We had 3 teams, and we have this app that we would collaborate with the 3 teams, and when somebody couldn't make it, you would go in there and say, okay, I can't make it this week. And I was the guy who never said no. And I would sacrifice everything. And one day my pastor said, hey, Glenn, you can say no. It's okay. And it really made me think about it. I've been this way my whole life with everybody. And I'm trying to figure out things as I go through life. And I just recently have learned to say no to a few things, and it feels really damn good. I'm not going to lie. Because I had to sit back and say, wait a minute, who is showing up for me? Who? Who really is showing up for me? And that's when I started realizing something. A boundary isn't me telling someone else what they're allowed to do with their life. A boundary is me deciding, what am I going to allow in my life? Maybe that's what loving yourself enough looks like sometimes. And loving somebody else should never require me to forget that. Ever. So today, I want to take a good look at all this stuff, all this data that I accumulated of reality, and I'm going to unpack why sometimes the bravest, most important thing you can ever do is face reality, respect your own name, and walk away from a table where respect is no longer being served. The harder that we try to control another person's heart, the farther away it often seems to drift, doesn't it? Sometimes the greatest act of love is opening your hand, and not because you stop caring. You cannot survive inside a clenched fist. This applies to everything, not just romance. It's marriages, friendships, children, parents, dreams, and even our relationship with God. Why is letting go one of the hardest things we'll ever do? Why? And there's something else I've been thinking about while putting this episode together. Sometimes we confuse the intensity of love with the health of love. And those aren't necessarily the same thing. So we have to love ourselves enough. That is important. Because I don't believe healing requires rewriting history. You don't say none of it mattered. You don't have to hate anybody. You don't have to burn every photograph. You don't have to throw anything away. Just place it away. Hide it. Hide it if something's bothering you. Take the pictures down. If you have to, burn it. And I certainly don't have to turn somebody that I once loved into a monster so I can move forward. I can honor what was good and still acknowledge what hurts now. Those two truths can exist in the same heart. It's not easy, but it's something you have to work on, and this will bring you inner peace. Healing isn't necessarily erasing the chapter. It's learning how to carry what mattered without allowing the absence to control the rest of the story. Remember, love yourself enough. And maybe that's where some of us get stuck, right here. We're trying so desperately not to lose the person that we don't even realize we've already started losing ourselves. Because you could have blessings right in front of your face. These distractions can burn blessings down right in front of you. And distractions could be everything from a good or a bad rebound, or from somebody that's right in front of you, and you don't even see them because you're blinded by all this stuff. I've done a lot of research on this one, because there are things in my life that will probably always mean something to me. Songs, dates, places, memories, and even numbers, certain numbers. And I'm not interested in erasing them. They're part of my story. But I'm beginning to understand that remembering yesterday and living today are two completely different things. Maybe loving myself enough means that I don't have to destroy the past. I just have to stop living there. And I don't know what tomorrow brings. None of us do. People change. Circumstances change. Sometimes relationships heal. Sometimes people reconnect. Sometimes life surprises the hell out of us. Sometimes people get sick and they're here today and gone tomorrow. Sometimes today might look terrible, but tomorrow could be a miracle. It's just the way it goes. Think about somebody who's stranded on an island, or stranded on a raft, or stranded somewhere, right? With no hope for a long period of time. And then they're rescued. The boat comes, or the helicopter comes. Just think about that. They went from thinking probably we're going to die to a miracle. And you have to say to yourself, whatever tomorrow does, I still have to live today. And so do you. And right now I want to take you into a piece of unvarnished history. I recently spent hours going over and over this manuscript that I heard from a 103-year-old woman. She was born back in 1922. She lived through an entire century of human history. She buried 2 of her children. She buried a husband that she loved so deeply that she still talks about him when nobody is around to hear her. But her life didn't begin in the light. She was married the first time at 16 years old, and she spent 8 straight years living in absolute paralyzing fear every single day. Fear when he came home, fear when he didn't, fear when he was quiet, fear when he was loud, fear of what she was thinking. She thought he was in her mind. This is what people live in. They live in hell. It's crazy. But this woman, this hit me hard because that's why I did a lot of research on this, because I know exactly what she was talking about. Because I know people who have lived it and some that are living in it. She had 2 babies in that house with that demon. And she spent nearly a decade trying to fix a man who did not want to be fixed and couldn't be fixed. Some people, it's biological. You will never change them. They'll just put the facade on and tell you what you want to hear. And then the cycle starts over and over. It just never ends. When she said she was trying to fix him, she almost died trying. She looked right at the camera and she said, "My first husband did not love me. He wanted to own me." And there's a difference. Some of you watching this or listening to this are living with somebody right now who wants to own you instead of love you, because they don't love you. They love themselves. And you're probably telling yourself that it's not too bad, that you can fix them or they'll change. Maybe if I just try harder. But you cannot fix them. And staying, if you're in a situation like this, it will destroy you and everyone around you. And you'll lose everything. Because you deserve better than that destruction. So hear me right now. When a person treats you like a backup plan, holds your peace hostage with threats, or demands that you shrink your edges to fit into a circle of lies, that's not a relationship. That's not love. It's not anything. It's a mistake. That is an occupier trying to own your territory. That's what it is. Because real love, the kind that this lady found later with a patient man named Earl, it doesn't ask you to disappear or tolerate abuse. And it could be physical abuse, mental abuse. It could be degrading abuse. What real love is 2 people who both want to be there and both fighting to protect the sanctuary. Some people enter your layout not to stay, but to function as a severe, painful lesson to force your own growth. And if you're currently sitting at your kitchen table trying to turn a dead ending into a new beginning, you're actively funding your own execution. Doesn't work. And this research on this one hurt. I'm not going to lie. Because letting go is one of the hardest things that we'll ever do. And that's why letting go hurts so much. Because you're saying goodbye to 2 things. The person and the future you imagined. And maybe, just maybe, loving yourself enough to let them go isn't giving up. It's accepting that painful truth that you cannot force another human being to love you, to choose you, or to stay. And I'm very excited about my next episode because I don't want this to sound like a down podcast. I'm trying to be positive on these. But there's some hope coming in the next podcast. There's some stuff I found in my research that I didn't want to add into this one. I didn't want to get away from what the topic was about. I think it's going to be very uplifting. So hang in there, and I hope these words help you. There's another way that we can stay attached to somebody long after everything has changed. And this one, it can drive you absolutely crazy. We wait for closure, don't we? We think there's going to be some conversation someday where everything finally makes sense. Where somebody explains why they did what they did, why they've changed, why they left, why they came back, why they said things, and why they said one thing and they did another. Why something that once felt certain suddenly becomes so confusing. When you put all your eggs in the basket, and then you go look, and the eggs are all cracked. And then we tell ourselves, if I could just understand why, if they would just tell me the truth, if they would just acknowledge what happened, if I could get just one honest conversation, then maybe I could finally move forward, right? I understand that feeling, probably more than I wish I did. But while researching this episode, I learned something about closure that changed the way I looked at it. Your brain hates an unfinished story, doesn't it? When something ends without a clear resolution, our minds have a tendency to keep returning to it. We replay conversations. We analyze texts. We remember things somebody said 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. We think about what we should have said. We construct imaginary conversations in the shower, driving down the road, lying awake at 2 a.m. We do all this stuff, and we keep trying to solve the damn puzzle. Our minds just struggle with an unfinished narrative. When there's no satisfying ending, we keep mentally returning to it, trying to complete the story. But hear this. Their actions are all the closure that you're ever going to need. Stop waiting for a sit-down conversation that's never going to happen. You don't need to subject yourself to more disappointment, more manipulation, more lies, or more cheap emotional crumbs just to find an ending. The disrespect that they've handed you, that's your closure. And the fact that they chose to compromise your peace, play games with your loyalty, that's your answer. Their behavior gave you the ultimate verdict. Maybe closure isn't a permission slip that another person has to sign and give you. Maybe closure is a boundary that you have to give to yourself. So maybe, sometimes, we already got that ending. We just didn't like the way it was delivered. Sometimes we're waiting for somebody just to sit across from us and explain everything, right? Finally tell the truth, maybe an apology, maybe acknowledge what they did, to say the words that somehow make all of it make sense. But what if their actions have already been speaking? The inconsistency, the disappointment, the broken promises, the professional lies, the silence, the crumbs, being there when it's convenient and disappearing when it isn't, never being there for you, making you question where you stand, making you feel like a nothing option when you've treated them like a priority. Maybe you don't need one more disappointment to finally understand the pattern. Maybe you don't need one more conversation that leaves you with 10 new questions. Maybe you don't need one more promise without an action behind it. Because sometimes their actions are the closure. And that's a hard freaking thing to accept, but it's needed. Because it's not the closure we wanted. We wanted an explanation, we wanted honesty, we wanted an apology, we wanted things to be repaired. But sometimes the answer isn't contained in what somebody finally says. It's contained in what they're repeatedly showing you. And loving yourself enough, it may mean finally believing in what you've been shown instead of continuing to wait for different words. And that's when something hit me. Maybe closure isn't something another person gives you. Maybe closure is something that you eventually have to give yourself. Because if my ability to heal depends upon somebody else finally saying the exact right words, then I've handed them the remote control over my healing too. Closure is less about obtaining a perfect explanation from somebody else and more about reaching a place where unanswered questions no longer control your emotional life. And that's different. It doesn't mean I don't care anymore. It means I care. But I don't need an answer in order to live. You just don't. I still believe that God can do things that I can't see coming. Like I said, the miracle could come tomorrow. I could be on that island, and then all of a sudden, here comes the helicopter out of nowhere. Just like that. And for me, there's a spiritual side to this too. Faith doesn't mean I know what's coming. Actually, faith exists precisely because I don't know what's coming. Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. How many times have I quoted that? It's difficult when all you want is understanding, isn't it? Why did this happen? Why did God allow this? Why did God give me this and take it away? Why hasn't something changed? Why haven't I gotten the answer? Why hasn't this worked out for me? What did I do wrong? Am I a bad person? Maybe faith isn't God giving me every answer. Maybe sometimes faith is saying, God, I don't understand this, but I'm not going to destroy today trying to understand yesterday. I'm going to trust you with the part that I cannot control. I'm going to take responsibility for the part that I can, which are my choices, my character, my healing, my faith, and my next step. Because maybe I don't need to know the ending right now. Maybe I just need enough faith just to turn the page. And the clinical research on interpersonal dynamics backs this up with cold precision. Studies on attachment and self-worth, they show that when we get trapped in a trauma loop, we automatically begin to tie our identity to external validation. We make someone else's presence the sole measure of our own value. If being in a relationship, whether it's romantic, a friendship, a family, a business deal, whatever it is, if it requires you to shrink your frame, silence your standards, or constantly beg someone to see your worth, it's not love, it's fear. We talked about that earlier. And a relationship rooted in fear, it isn't a sanctuary. It's a prison of control. We tell ourselves dangerous stories to keep our boots stuck in the mud, don't we? We ask ourselves, what if no one else loves me? What if I'm being too harsh? What if this is the best I can ever get? What if this? What if that? But hear me, those stories, they're just designed to keep you small. And during the research I did on this, it changed how I looked at that. When we're deeply connected to somebody and your lives begin intertwining, our routines overlap, our social circles overlap, our plans overlap, even our identities can overlap. We stop thinking only in terms of me and we start thinking in terms of we. But that empty space can also eventually become the room for rediscovery. And not because the empty space doesn't hurt. It freaking hurts. Because maybe empty doesn't always mean nothing. Sometimes it means there's room for something you forgot, room for somebody you haven't met, room for a dream that you put aside, room for an old friendship, room for a new friendship, room for travel, maybe a stronger faith, maybe room for quiet, maybe just room to figure out who you are when you're not trying to figure out somebody else. Because loving yourself enough isn't just about recovering the person you was before somebody came into your life. Maybe you're not supposed to become that person again. You've experienced too much. You've learned too much. You've hurt too much. You've loved too much. Maybe the goal isn't to go backward. Maybe the goal is to take everything you learned and build somebody new. And maybe with somebody new. Maybe you say, what am I going to build? What am I going to create? What am I going to do? What am I going to help? What am I going to learn? Who am I going to meet? Who am I going to call? Because you still have yourself. You probably have a small circle of close friends. Hopefully you still do. You have whatever you have in your life. Maybe you have a job. Maybe you have a podcast like me. I don't know. I play music. Maybe you're a musician. Maybe you're an artist. But you still have things. Maybe go talk to people that have helped you or you've helped them. Maybe go meet new people. And when you talk to your close people, maybe talk about the strange reality that sometimes something that nearly destroys us becomes the very thing that pushes us to create something that helps somebody else or meet somebody else. I didn't ask for some of these things that happen to me, and none of us do. But one thing I do get to decide is what I do with what happened. Maybe I cannot rewrite the chapter that broke me or put me in this position, but I sure as hell have the same say in what I write next. I want to ask you another question and change it a little bit. Because maybe you spent months asking, why did this happen to me? I don't know what situation you're in. I don't. But whatever situation you're in, it's a fair question to say, why did this happen to me, isn't it? I've asked it. I've screamed it. I've prayed it. But maybe eventually there's another question. What am I going to do now that it did? Because those are two completely different questions. One keeps you staring backwards, and the other, it doesn't erase the past, but it gives you somewhere to go. And maybe loving yourself enough means finally realizing that empty space in your life isn't necessarily where your story ended. Maybe it's where the next part finally has room to begin. But peace at the cost of my own identity, or your own identity, it's a slow, toxic erosion of the soul. And I'm done paying that price. I'm done. Over the past year or so, I've been reading books. I've listened to counselors, psychologists, pastors, relationship experts, and people who have survived unimaginable loss. And I've been going on these forums and listened to all these testimonies. And although they all approached healing differently, they all kept coming back to the same truths. And the first truth is this: you cannot heal while trying to convince someone to love you. It comes up over and over. Love is a gift, and it cannot be negotiated. It cannot be manipulated, and it cannot be guilted into existence. And the second thing I learned was that many of us confuse love with attachment. Attachment says, I can't live without you, and love says, I deeply care about you, but I refuse to lose myself. And they're two different things right there. And another lesson I learned through research hit me hard was realizing how much hope can slowly become waiting. But you know what? Life just keeps moving, and days become months, and months become years. And one day we wake up wondering, where did this time go? But all of that raises another question. If those things are all true, then what does God actually say about letting go? What does he say about forgiveness, boundaries, and healing? Let's look at the Bible. Let's see what the Bible says on this. Because there's a phrase people throw around when someone's hurting. You just need to let go. I freaking hate that sometimes, man. Because what does that mean? Let go of what? The person? The memories? The love? The plans? Things you believed? The future you pictured? Are you supposed to wake up Tuesday morning and decide, okay, I don't give a shit anymore? That's not how the human heart works. At least mine doesn't work that way. You can believe with every piece of your heart that somebody is making the wrong decision, but guess what? It's their decision. You can tell somebody the truth. You can offer them your hand. You can pray for them, love them. You can hope that eventually they'll see something different. Maybe they smarten up. But there comes a point where you have to realize that I cannot live somebody else's life for them. And if I spend every working hour trying, I'm eventually going to stop living my own. And like I said, it doesn't mean that the door has to be bolted shut. This is where I think sometimes people go too far in the opposite direction. They say, block them everywhere, erase everything, never speak to them again, pretend they don't exist. Sometimes that is absolutely necessary. If you're with a parasite and you're with a narcissist or a rotten person, when you finally get them out of your life, absolutely. That is all necessary. You have to pretend they don't exist and remove them as far as you can from your mind, your soul, and your physical being. Because that is absolutely necessary, particularly when there's abuse, danger, or repeated destructive behavior. But not every situation is the same. Sometimes loving yourself enough isn't about slamming a door. Sometimes it's simply saying, I'm not staying in the doorway anymore. I'm going to live. And words are not the same as actions. Okay? Healthy relationships require mutual respect, communication, boundaries, not simply attachment or intensity. So if someone comes back in your life, you don't have to punish them. You don't have to make them crawl. You don't have to play games. But you are allowed to ask, what's different? What has changed? What are we doing differently this time? Are we both here? Are we both trying? Are we both willing to do the work? Because loving yourself enough means you're no longer satisfied with somebody merely returning. You need them to show up 100%. And there's a difference. Because I've had to ask myself something difficult. If somebody I love knocked at my door tomorrow, would I immediately go right back to exactly what we had simply because I missed them? I don't think I could anymore. You just have to take that step forward. And here's what I've learned from the hours of studying the hard data, reading the research, and analyzing human behavior in quiet hours of my own place here in my own apartment. When you consistently suppress your true feelings to avoid conflict, your sense of self-worth takes a catastrophic hit. And one of the things I love about the Bible, it never tells us to pretend pain doesn't exist. It tells us to deny heartbreak, is what it does. It doesn't tell us to ignore betrayal. It teaches us how to walk through it. Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. I used to think that guarding my heart meant building walls around it. But I've learned guarding your heart isn't refusing to love. It's refusing to let bitterness, resentment, or another person's choices define who you become. That's what it is. Jesus loved people completely. Yet, even he allowed people to walk away. Think about the rich young ruler. Jesus loved him. He told him the truth, and when the young man chose another path, Jesus didn't chase him down the road. Love was offered. The choice belonged to the other person. And that's incredibly difficult, because many of us believe love means never letting go. But Scripture teaches something different, that love is patient, love is kind, love hopes, love perseveres, but love cannot force another person's heart. Romans 12:18 says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Did you catch that? As far as it depends on you. God never asks us to control another person's choices. He asks us to be responsible for ours. And that's freedom. And another verse that stayed with me is that Isaiah 43:19. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Sometimes we're focused on the door that closed, that we never notice the new path that God is quietly preparing for us. And that doesn't mean that the door closed didn't matter. It just means that God isn't finished writing your story. And one of the greatest acts of faith is believing that God's plan for your life are not limited by another person's decisions. That's where hope begins, not in certainty, but in trust. So what does this actually look like tomorrow morning? How do we stop simply agreeing with these ideas and actually begin living them? And I'm going to put that link in the description of that 103-year-old woman, because I would quote it here, but I can't give the thing justice. It's 25 minutes long. It's a bit long, but I will not give it justice if you hear it coming right from her mouth. And there's one other idea that I have to talk about. She describes a life filled with things that she couldn't control. Poverty, an abusive marriage, the death of a child, later the death of another child, war, grief, becoming a widow, and then more loss than most of us can ever imagine carrying. And yet, the central question running through the story isn't simply what happened to me. It's what am I going to do after it happened? And that's the part that got me. That video describes her first marriage of 8 years of fear. And then after that chapter ended, she was left in her 20s with her children, very little money, every reason to believe her life had already been decided for her. But instead, she rebuilt, working, raising her children, and eventually allowed herself to trust again. And then she found a completely different kind of life with Earl. And there's another line in that story that I want to paraphrase because it fits everything we talked about today. What happens to you isn't always your choice. What you do afterward often is. Think about that. Because every person listening today, right now, has something that they didn't choose. Maybe somebody left. Maybe someone died. Maybe somebody betrayed you. Maybe someone cheated on you. Maybe your marriage ended. Maybe you got sick. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe someone hurt you terribly. Maybe life turned out completely different from what you thought it would be. You didn't choose the event, but eventually, you have choices about what happens next. And also her story gets a little heavier. This lady talks about her losing her daughter when the girl was only 11 years old. And she describes what her husband did while she was grieving. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't demand that she hurry up and become okay. He stayed beside her. He made sure she ate. He helped take care of the other children. He allowed her to grieve. And from that experience, she reaches this understanding. Love shows up. That section of the story, it contrasts the controlling fear of her first marriage with the patient presence of her second husband. And that distinction matters, because loving yourself enough doesn't mean that you stop believing in love. Actually, maybe it means you finally understand what love is supposed to look like. Love isn't ownership. It is not fear. It's not eggshells. Love isn't somebody having to disappear so the other person can become comfortable. And healthy love isn't one person doing all the work. It's two people who want to be there, two people trying, two people showing up. And that's important, because sometimes people hear love yourself enough and they think I'm saying you don't need anybody. It's bullshit. I think we need people. I think we need connection. I think we need somebody sitting beside us sometimes when life absolutely destroys us. I absolutely think that. I wish I had somebody by my side in a couple of moments that I needed somebody and nobody was there. But there's a difference between needing people and abandoning yourself to keep one. And then that lady, she loses another child. Her son goes to Vietnam and he doesn't come home. And at that point, she's buried 2 children. The story describes periods where the grief comes so severe that she didn't even know how she was going to continue. But somewhere underneath it was the idea that I'm not finished yet. And that's the part I want somebody listening, maybe it's you right now, on this episode to hear. Because maybe right now you don't feel strong. You don't feel inspirational. Maybe you don't feel like rebuilding anything. Maybe you're just stuck. Maybe getting out of bed this morning was an accomplishment. I understand that, but listen to me. You're not finished yet. Your story isn't finished because somebody disappointed you. Your story isn't finished because something you prayed for hasn't happened yet. And your story isn't finished because you're 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80. Because that woman reflects on repeatedly having to change after loss throughout her entire life. Change wasn't limited to youth. Life just kept requiring her to become somebody new. And I don't know what's written on your next page, on my next page. But guess what? I'm still here and you're still here to turn the page, right? And towards the end of that woman's story, she talks about regret. And what she says surprised me. She says, looking back more than 100 years, the regrets that hurt most weren't necessarily the things that she did. They were the things that she didn't do. The words that she didn't say. The calls that she didn't make. The time that she spent angry, afraid, and stubborn when she could have been present. And that doesn't mean call somebody who's hurting you. It doesn't mean violate someone's boundary. It doesn't mean chase somebody. It doesn't mean tolerate abuse. That's not what I'm taking from this. What I took from that lady was stop postponing your life. Call your kid. Call your mother. Call your father. Call your friend. Call your forever. Call your soulmate. Call your best friend. Call whoever it is. Tell somebody you're proud of them. Apologize when you're wrong. Forgive when you're ready. Take the trip. Play the song. Start the thing that you've been talking about starting for 5 freaking years. Sit outside and watch the sunset. Tell someone you love them while they're still here to hear it. Because that would be terrible if the last thing you said to them was something that you're going to regret. Because none of us know how many days are left and how many pages are left. Because loving yourself enough isn't just walking away from something painful. That's too small. It's also loving yourself enough to realize that my remaining life has value. My remaining time has value. The people still standing beside me have value. Today has value. And I'm not going to sacrifice everything that's still here because I'm grieving something that isn't here the way it used to be. Maybe that's the real shift. From look at everything lost to look at everything I still have and the opportunity to become. And that video of her, It ended exactly with that. Don't settle for a life that keeps you miserable simply because changing it feels frightening. It's not too late. And maybe you need to hear this today. Maybe I needed to hear this today. But you know what? You're not finished. Not yet. So, if you've listened this far, I want you to know something. I believe there's hope, even if you can't see it today. And what do you actually do? Because I don't want somebody listening to this episode for an hour, or this one went long. I don't want you to just feel inspired for 5 minutes and then waking up tomorrow morning in exactly the same emotional prison that you're in. I'm not going to give you some bullshit list that says, oh, go take a bubble bath, or think positive, or everything happens for a reason, because life freaking hurts. And sometimes your heart gets broken. And sometimes, you get depressed. Sometimes you wake up and the very first thought in your head is the one thing that you're trying desperately not to think about. Because sometimes loving yourself isn't a feeling. It's an action that you take while the feeling is completely absent. Maybe loving yourself enough means if I have something worth saying, I'll say it because it's true, not because I'm hoping one person reacts to it. And sometimes you don't need to say anything at all. You really don't. Let people love you. When the person you desperately want love from isn't giving it to you the way you need it, it's easy to become blind to everyone who is. It's the friend who checks on you, your kid who calls, maybe the person that supports you. Maybe it's the person that sends you a message because something that you said helped them. Maybe it's the stranger that just smiles at you. Maybe it's the person that sits beside you when you're having a shitty day. Don't become so focused on the empty chair that you stop seeing everybody else sitting at the table. Because sometimes we're begging one person to prove that we're lovable while 10 other people around us are already loving us. You have to stop trying to turn dead endings into new beginnings. And you may not see what God's doing today. You may still wake up with the tears. You still may have days where your heart aches. Healing's not a straight line. Some days you're going to feel strong, and some other days you're going to feel like you're right back at the beginning. And that's okay. You just keep walking, you keep praying, you keep showing up. One little step, baby steps. One step becomes another, and 1 mile becomes another. One conversation becomes another. One sunrise becomes another. Because all this simply says that God's work in you is just as miraculous as anything else that happens around you. And it's very hard to just give it to God, I know. And what does that actually look like? Or what does it mean? Because I've prayed about many things, and 5 minutes later, I'm thinking about the same thing. I've handed something to God at midnight, and I take the damn thing right back at 12:05. I said, God, I trust you. And then I immediately start trying to figure out what he's doing. Maybe some of you do the same thing, right? I used to think surrender meant I shouldn't want something anymore. That if I really trusted God, somehow I'd become indifferent to the outcome. But I don't believe that. Jesus himself prayed at Gethsemane about what he wanted while ultimately surrendering himself to his Father's will. So maybe faith doesn't require pretending we don't have desires. Maybe you can say, God, I know exactly what I want. You know what hurts. You know what I'm praying for. You know what I wish would happen. I'm not going to lie about any of it. But I can't control it. And that's the part I'm giving you, the control. And there's a difference between hope and control. Hope says I believe something beautiful can still happen, and control says it has to happen exactly the way I decided. That's control. And they're not the same thing. And I've confused them myself sometimes. And that story about that old lady, she talks repeatedly about circumstances people simply couldn't control. Death, illness, violence, war, loss. But the message kept returning to what a person does afterward, right? It doesn't mean we control everything that happens next either. We don't. We still have the choices to make. Do you become bitter? Do you just disappear? Do you move? Do you decide what matters because something you desperately wanted didn't happen? Or do you say, God, I understand the chapter that I'm in, but I'm just going to live in it, and I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to come up on top like I always do? Maybe that's what trust really looks like. Proverbs 3:5. Remember? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. I've read that verse so many times. But think about what it's actually asking. It doesn't say trust God once you understand. It's almost the opposite, right? Trust him because you don't. And that's freaking hard. Because everybody wants answers. Everybody wants timelines, explanations. You want God to hand you the next 5 pages so you can just see what the hell's going on, right? But you know what? He doesn't do that. Look at Peter when he was in the water. And the story in the Bible means something different to me now than it used to. Peter gets out of the boat. He walks towards Jesus on the water. And for a moment, he's doing the impossible, right? Then Peter notices the wind. He sees the storm. And fear takes over. And he starts sinking. And what does he do? He cries, Lord, save me. And in Matthew 14, it says that Jesus immediately reached out his hand. Immediately. I love that. Peter didn't have to fix himself before reaching either. He didn't have to swim halfway back. He didn't have to prove his faith was strong enough. He just reached, and Jesus reached back. And I just recently put that image of that tattoo on my arm of Peter getting pulled from the water. And I thought about that, what that image really means to me. Peter wasn't drowning because he was a terrible person. He was scared. He took his eyes off where he was going, and he became overwhelmed by the storm around him. And lately there have been a few moments where I totally understand that. There are days when I feel like I'm sinking. But the part I wanted permanently on my skin, it wasn't Peter sinking. It was the hand reaching for him. That was the point. Because I need to remember that the storm isn't the whole picture. It really isn't. Maybe your storm, I don't know what your storm is right now. Maybe it isn't heartbreak. Maybe it's grief, addiction, money, your health, maybe a family member's health, your marriage, loneliness, depression. Maybe nobody around you understands how exhausted you are. You're just hiding it. Maybe you don't have the whole answer tonight, but I'm going to tell you something. You know what you do? You reach. You pray boldly. If that's all you can do, you say, Jesus, help me. That is an actual prayer. Jesus, I need help. Please help me. It's a beautiful prayer. You don't need the beautiful words. You don't need a microphone. You don't need a church building. Sometimes just 3 words. Jesus, help me is more than enough. Loving yourself enough can include letting God love you. Maybe you've spent so much time trying to earn love from people that you've forgotten something. God isn't asking you to audition. Not at all. Psalms 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Not disappointed in the brokenhearted. Not annoyed in the brokenhearted. Close. So when you're cracked open, maybe that's not the moment that God moves farther away. Maybe that's precisely where you discover how you need him. And no, faith does not magically remove grief. It doesn't mean you're not going to cry anymore or ever again. It doesn't guarantee that tomorrow something's going to look the way you want. But it could. But it can also mean this too, that you don't have to carry tomorrow today. And say to yourself, so here's where I'm trying to get to. I can still hope. I can pray. I can believe in restoration. I can believe in miracles. I can believe people change. I can believe people smarten up. I can still believe God can do something that I don't see coming. And you know what else you can do? You can live today. Those things don't contradict each other. Maybe surrender isn't killing hope. Maybe surrender is finally saying, God, I'm just going to stop telling you how the story has to end. I'm going to tell you what I want. I'm going to tell you I've been hurting. I'll probably tell you again and again, and I'll do it again tomorrow. But I'm going to trust you with what I cannot control. And while I'm waiting to see what you do, I'm going to live life that you've already given to me. Because maybe the greatest act of faith isn't just sitting around waiting for a miracle. Maybe sometimes it's just getting up and living while you still believe one is possible. And that old lady, she looked back at a century of grief, funerals, wars, and she disagreed with the idea that you get too old to change. She said she changed when she was 24, when she was 30, when she was 47, when she was 76, and she said, "You are never too old to change, but you might be too stubborn. You might be too scared. You might be too comfortable with your own misery to imagine anything different. That is what will kill you, not age, but stubbornness, fear, and comfort in misery." And sitting in a room filled of lies just because it's familiar, that's not loyalty. It's comfort in misery. When you stop negotiating your own worth, you get to experience something life-changing, absolute freedom. The void left behind when you walk away, it's not an empty hole. It's pure possibility. It's the space where you get to expand, reclaim your name, and you get yourself back, the person you are, not the person you're living in right now. And you get to meet the person you were always divinely meant to be before you started shrinking your edges. But I don't want to leave you bleeding in the valley tonight. Before we get into a little prayer, I'd like to just say I'm going to put a little playlist of music videos. If you want to hear some songs, sometimes people relate to the music. Just click on the video link and it'll go into a bunch of videos, and maybe one of them will touch your heart. And after everything we've talked about today, I want to make something really clear. Loving yourself enough doesn't mean you become an asshole. It doesn't mean you become cold. It doesn't mean deciding that you're never going to trust anybody again. And it doesn't mean making the next person pay for what the last person did to you. We can protect ourselves so aggressively that we eventually let nothing get in. Not the bad, but not the good either. If somebody hurts you, and afterwards you become angry at everybody, suspicious of everybody, closed off to everybody, then that experience is still controlling you. Let that crap go. And try to be patient with people who are struggling. And remember that you have no idea what someone else may be carrying. Someone's child may have died. Some marriage might be falling apart. Someone may be having the worst day of their life and nobody around them knows it. Just remember what that old lady said. She had seen some of the worst things that people can do to one another, but also some of the best. And after everything she said, I noticed that she didn't become bitter. Maybe that's the real test right there. Anyone can be kind when life has given them everything they want. And anybody can have faith when every prayer seems answered. And anybody can have love when they're being loved exactly the way they want. But what happens when someone disappoints you? When that one person that was your person disappoints you? It's the worst feeling. And what happens when you're hurt? What happens when life doesn't make sense? Who do you become then? That's the question. And like with me, I think the problem is I love too hard, man. Maybe I think I care too much, and I say to myself, maybe I should become colder. Maybe I should stop giving people chances. And maybe I should stop believing in people. But that's not who I want to become. What I need, it's not a colder heart. It's a wiser one. That's what I need. Because loving yourself doesn't require loving everybody else less. It means finally including yourself among the people that you're willing to fight for. You have to fight for yourself. And maybe that's this whole damn episode right there. And as long as you're still here, there's another page. You have another page. Maybe that's where you are right now, in the middle. And the middle is freaking uncomfortable, isn't it? Because there's no ending yet. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know who's still going to be in your life a year from now. And you don't know which relationship gets repaired. You don't know which friendship disappears. You don't know which prayer gets answered the way you hoped for. You don't know which dream changes. Or who you're going to meet. Or what call is coming. Or what opportunity is around the corner. Or what tomorrow brings. Remember I talked about the guy on the island who got rescued? It's a great analogy, because we don't know. And you know what? Maybe that's okay. Because we spend so much of our lives trying to read ahead, Remember, we talked about that earlier with closure. And you'd say, just tell me the freaking ending so I can just relax. But life doesn't work that way. And one of the strongest ideas comes from that old lady. She said, you cannot read ahead. You have to live the page that you're on. Think about that. Maybe we're spending too much time trying to read tomorrow and not enough time actually living today. Because you can hold both of those truths at once. We judge ourselves by having conflicted emotions. I thought I was getting better. Why am I so sad? You know why? Because you're human. I was laughing yesterday. I was having the time of my life yesterday. Why am I crying uncontrollably today? Because you're human. I know I need to move forward. Why do I still miss somebody? Why am I stuck here? You know why? Because you're freaking human. That's why. Difficult emotions can return even when genuine progress is happening. Because cracked open was never supposed to be someone who has all the answers. It's somebody who's cracked open trying to help somebody else who's cracked open. And that is you. So maybe we figure this out together. But here's what I want to leave you with before we close this out. Don't think that you are unworthy of being chosen. And don't assume anything because your life doesn't look anything like you thought it would. And don't assume that nothing beautiful could still happen because you don't know what's on the next page. And neither do I. And that woman in the story, she had no idea either. At different points in her story, she believed that her life had essentially collapsed. And then life changed. She rebuilt. She loved again, lost again, changed again, and just kept living. And her message wasn't everything worked out exactly the way I planned. It was essentially, don't waste the life you still have. Her reflections repeatedly return to change after loss, the danger of becoming comfortable in misery, and the regret of leaving important things unsaid or undone. And that's different. Maybe a meaningful life isn't one where nothing terrible happens. Maybe it's the one where terrible things don't get the final word. So wherever you are right now, if you're happy, appreciate it. If somebody loves you, don't take them for granted. If you owe somebody an apology, I would make it. If somebody has been consistently there for you, tell them what they mean to you. And if you're hurting, ask for help. If you're exhausted, just rest. Take care of yourself. And if you're depressed, do not disappear. And if you're waiting, live while you wait. Maybe you don't need to know how the story ends. Maybe all you need tonight is that you're still in it. And maybe that's enough for today. I don't know exactly what comes next in my story or your story. And for once, maybe I don't have to. So as we close, I want to leave you with the final thought. Don't be afraid to turn the page. Because sometimes the greatest act of faith is believing that God still has something beautiful ahead of you, even when you can't see it. And that's what pure faith is, right? And before I pray, I just want to say one last thing. Maybe you clicked on an episode called Love Yourself Enough because somebody hurt you. Maybe you're just simply tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of wondering when life is finally going to get easier. Maybe you're tired of waking up carrying the same weight that you went to bed carrying. Maybe it's all of the above. Whatever brought you here, I'm glad you're here. And I don't mean here listening to my podcast. Here, alive, breathing, and still getting another shot at it today. So simply just make that decision that you're not giving up on yourself today. And tomorrow, we'll deal with tomorrow when it gets here. And if you still love somebody, love them. I'm not going to tell you what your heart's allowed to feel. But don't disappear inside that love. You can leave tomorrow in God's hands while choosing to live today. And if this is one of the bad days, then don't decide your whole future from one bad day. Tomorrow's a new day. Worry about today because tomorrow has enough of its problems. So, if you have an opportunity, bow your heads, or I'm going to try to get on my knees right now as I say this prayer. Heavenly Father, I pray for every person listening today whose heart feels heavy. For those who have been abandoned, betrayed, disappointed, deeply disappointed, or left wondering if they'll ever feel whole again. Remind them that their worth doesn't come from another person's acceptance. It comes from being loved by you and by genuine people, not with just words. Give them courage to take the next step. Give them the wisdom to know that they can change, and peace to trust you with what they cannot. Heal what is broken, restore what's been lost, and help each one of us become the men and women that you've called us to be. I pray for everyone who's listening right now who's tired, again, whose heart is broken, who spent so much time loving somebody else that somewhere along the way they forgot how to take care of themselves. The person who woke up this morning who didn't want to get out of bed, the person who's confused, the person who's lonely, who's waiting for an answer that hasn't come, the person who's trying to hold on to faith while everything inside them feels like it's all falling apart. Lord, meet them there. Not where everybody thinks they should be, and not where they pretend to be. Meet them exactly where they are. Jesus, when Peter was sinking, he cried out, "Lord, save me." And you reached for him. So for anybody sinking right now, reach for them. And for anybody who doesn't have the strength for some long, beautiful prayer tonight, let 3 words be enough. Jesus, help me. Help me get through today and out of bed tomorrow. And help me stop fighting battles that aren't mine to control. Help me to release the question that I can't answer. And help me to establish boundaries without becoming bitter as much as it hurts. And help me forgive without abandoning myself. Help me to stop measuring my worth by someone else's choices. And help me remember that I'm still worthy of love even when somebody doesn't know how to love me the way that I need. And Lord, for the things we're still hoping for, we give them to you. You already know the prayers that we keep repeating. You know the names. You know the relationships, the families, the marriages, the people we miss. You know the things we desperately want restored. You know the miracles that we're still hoping to see. I'm not asking anybody listening to kill their hope. I'm asking you to help us carry hope differently. Help us hope without destroying today. Help us pray without trying to control tomorrow. And help us trust you when we don't understand what you're doing. And if restoration comes, please let it come with truth, healing, accountability, and changed hearts. And let it come with 2 people willing to show up to do the work. Because we learned today that returning isn't the same as repairing. Lord, teach us the difference. And Father, if we're on that island and we thought that we were going to be stuck there forever, and then we're rescued, please let that rescue come sooner than later. And while we wait for whatever tomorrow holds, teach us to live. Please put people around the lonely and give strength to the exhausted. Give courage to the person who needs to ask for help, and give peace to the mind that won't stop racing. Give rest to the person who hasn't slept, and give hope to the person who thinks that their best days are behind them. And remind every person listening that their story is not finished. There are still pages that they have not lived. There's still purpose, love, laughter, and there's still people they haven't even met yet. There's still opportunities that they cannot see yet. And there are still things that you can do that none of us can imagine from where we're standing today. Help us, Jesus. Help us love deeply. Teach us to love ourselves as well. Soften our hearts. Wisen our hearts. Teach us when to hold on and when to release our grip. When to speak. When to be silent. And when we don't know what to do, help us just keep our eyes on you, because the storm isn't the whole picture. Your hand is still there, Father. So tonight, we give you the pages we cannot read yet. Our hands are reaching, please grab them. We give you the people we cannot control. We give you yesterday because we cannot change it. And we give you tomorrow because we cannot see it. We ask you for enough strength for today. Help us take the next step. And help us keep turning the pages, and most of all, help us not give up on ourselves. And for every man or woman with a broken soul who's currently sitting at their kitchen table asking themselves how they got into this dark, Lord, people are running on empty. They're trapped in a trauma loop of self-betrayal and manipulation. And I ask you to inject an unshakable spirit of self-worth straight into their veins tonight. Give them the supernatural grit to stop trying to pull bent nails out of the wood. Help them surrender the battle, step out of your way, and trust when you crash a bridge. It's the only way to rescue them from a fire. Seal their perimeters in silence and guard their hearts with your iron peace, and pull them out of the raging waters just like you pulled Peter out of the storm. Let them rest secure inside their own sanctuary tonight. And we ask this in Jesus' holy, precious name. Amen. So if no one has told you this lately, your life still has purpose. Your story's not over. Just keep showing up. Keep growing. Keep believing. One day you're going to look back and you're going to realize God wasn't changing your circumstances. He was changing you. And that may have been the greatest miracle of all. The regrets that hurt the most at the end of a century are not the things that we did. They're the things that we did not do. The words that we did not say. The calls that we did not make. The time we wasted being angry or scared or stubborn when we could have been present in our own lives. Do not accept the version of your life that keeps you small or makes you miserable or changes you or makes you somebody you are not just because changing seems hard. That voice inside you right now is telling you the truth tonight. And love yourself enough to let the past burn down so you can step into what is waiting ahead. Just lift your chin up. And as we close the book on this chapter tonight, remember this: the right time to reclaim your life is not next month. It's not next year. It's now. The right time is the exact split second that you decide that you're ready to take up space in your world again. You are too elite and your love is too real. Put the past in the rearview mirror and look forward. And I want to leave you with this. Maybe loving yourself isn't about finally reaching a day or when you don't care anymore. Maybe it's not about forgetting. Maybe it's not about closing every door, burning every bridge, or pretending that the past didn't matter. Maybe it's simply reaching a place where you can say, I mattered in that story too. My heart mattered, my peace mattered, my dignity mattered, my life mattered, and whatever happens next, I still matter. And that's where I'm going to leave you on this one. If something in this episode hit you, if it helped you, challenged you, or maybe just reminded you that you're not the only person trying to figure this shit out, share it with somebody, because you never know what somebody else is carrying. Keep reaching, praying, turning the page. This is Cracked Open with Glen Nunes. Real life, real struggles, heartbreak, healing, faith, hope, and everything messy in between. And remember, sometimes it's through those cracks that we finally see what's inside us. Sometimes it's where the healing begins and where the light finally gets in. So until next time, remember that your integrity is your legacy. Treat others as you want to be treated. And karma and God has no favorites, so take care of each other. Whatever chapter you're standing in right now, don't give up before you see what happens next. I'll see you next time on Cracked Open. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Cracked Open. If today's episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who might need a little light in their own dark season. Remember, even in brokenness, there's beauty waiting to be found. every crack is a place where the light can shine through. Until next time, stay true, stay hopeful, and keep your heart open.